All right. So we are going to take the 3D print we had last time. It's been sanded, it's been primed, it's been bondoed, it's been primed and sanded. Now we're going to put the final the actual paint and we're going to turn it from what you saw last video into this. Let me show you how I did that. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to prime all of this gray black. That's just so I know everything is covered and it's nice and neat looking. Speaking of neat looking, this thing, let me bring it around so you can see it. This thing came out fantastic. Look at that. I am so happy with how that looks. All the filigree is just, oh my goodness. And the paint we were about to put on this is going to make a huge difference. So step one, black primer. We'll see in a minute. Everything's been primed black, right? I do that so if I have to sand stuff, I know when to stop because the black and the gray is a differentiating level. Always wear a respirator when you use spray paint or do something stupid. And what we're about to do is very stupid. I use graphite powder, right? A lot of people put graphite powder on their 3D prints. It makes it look metal-ish. The way I do it is completely different than most people. And graphite powder sits on the top, right? And then when you run into it and brush it, it's going to come off and it's going to be on everything. Rub and buff is the same way. Rub and buff is a wax that goes, it's a pigmented wax that it looks fantastic, but if you're not careful, it will get on everything that, you know, in your kit. The way I do it, it's less likely to because I should just do the thing and show you, explain. I would normally be wearing a respirator for all of this, but things are going to move pretty quick this time. We're going to start with one cylinder, right? I have graphite powder. I have garbage clear. This is important. It's not garbage clear, it's just not good clear. It takes a little longer to dry. It just takes a bit. And it's cold out right now, so that's going to work in our benefit. I'm going to spray the whole thing with clear. Then I'm going to cover the whole thing in graphite powder and brush everything off. The clear is going to act as a glue and will stick to the outside of the inside of the graphite powder. You'll see. It'll make sense in a minute. Or it won't make sense at all, and you know, I'm just a little weird. I should have a respirator on. So should you if you do this. But I want to be able to explain what's happening, and I'm being very careful. Coating the whole thing in clear. Probably a little heavier than I should. Doesn't really matter. Then I dump graphite powder on this whole thing. Right? So use my brush. Make sure that there's graphite powder everywhere. Will absolutely destroy this brush, which is why I use just a cheap chip brush. The finer your graphite powder, the better the result. Now the important statement in what I just said was the finer the graphite powder, the better result. Fine powders get in your lungs pretty easy. Look at that. That's got such a great look to it. And the more you buff it at this point, the more metallic it's going to look. I absolutely love this technique. Because it gets a real metal look about it, especially when you compare it to just as is. I am going to buff the heck out of this thing until it shines like metal, right? That's going to take a while. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to this. All of the filigree gets painted silver, and the dogs get painted silver. So I'm not going to focus too much on those areas. But I am going to dump graphite powder over it, the whole thing, just like I just did. The key to this is the finer the powder, right? If I use too big of a, or if I use the chip brush for too long, it's going to stop, it's going to leave clumps. And clumps are going to make it look aged and rusted, which isn't what I'm going for on this one. So I'm just going to do the thing. Exactly what we just did. I'm probably going to move us over a little farther from here, just so I have more room, and then I'm going to put my respirator on. So that's where we are right now. I'm going to give it some time to fully dry. I may even give it overnight. I don't know. We'll find out. But that's just step one. That time to dry. This is a part that's like a magic trick. It doesn't look anything, right? A little bit of sanding, a little buffing, I mean. Knocking all the excess off is what we're doing. If I had a little bit of steel wool, it might work. I haven't steel wooled these yet. Just trying to get all of the excess off. Suddenly, the light hits that perfect. I absolutely love how this looks. So I'm going to get a Dremel and a buffing wheel at some point in time. Just not at this point in time. Yeah, this is what we're all waiting for, right? What does it do to the barrel? What it does to the filigree. Look at that. That is stunning. That's not even adding the silver highlights yet. The nice thing about this is it's going to still be dark in the recesses. Alright, it's time for a buffing wheel. Be right back. Alright, let's try these nylon ones. Not what I want to use, but let's see what happens. So it'll work. You can see right there what it's going to look like, but it's just going to take forever. It's got to be something better. It's got to be a better way. Look at that thing. Let's see if we can get the sheen to show up right. That's gorgeous. Now to do that with everything. Look at that thing. There's a couple spots right here and right there. It'll need a bit of touch up. So I got a little too deep, and that's why I used two different color primers. Look at that thing. I'm super happy with that. Compared to where we started, that versus that. All right, so now it's just going to be a buffing and buffing and buffing. I am not going to subject you to watching me do that. So I will see you in a bit. So that's about as good as it's going to get for now. I may go over it, like I said, with steel wool later. I haven't decided yet. Right now we're going to do some dry brushing. And I feel dry brushing is one of those things that most people think they know but don't. There's a lot on here that gets silver dry brushed. I want this as dry as I can get it, and just lightly over it. Look how instantly that changes, right? I want almost no paint on this brush. It's a hard concept for most people to grasp. maybe a little more than that, but I only want highlights. And with a super dry brush, you can get that. If I put it on too thick, it's just going to paint the thing, and I don't want to paint the thing. Bob always said 3 hairs and some air, and that's what we're going for here, right? I want it to look with a hint of silver, not silver. I'm also doing some weathering, and the weathering I'm just hitting the edges, and then there you get this huge just jump in color. I want the dogs to pop out just a little more than the rest of it, so I'm just a hint more paint. And this is a Dirge of Cerberus. Cerberus, by the way. So it is way more weathered than, say, an Final Fantasy VII Cerberus. But to go from this, which is what we started with, and I absolutely love how that looks, right? To this. And suddenly, that's fantastic, right? Any high point, I'm hitting with a little bit of silver. So like these edges here, they'd get a little more wear than any recess. So they get just the lightest dusting of silver. Most people tend to overdo it when it comes to this. The handle's getting painted brown, so I'm not terribly worried about overpainting on it, because it gets a whole nother treatment on itself. So my camera thinks I'm done. It may be right. But with minimal weathering, look at that. That's perfect. So there are a couple places that get a light hit of gold, a couple more places that hit silver, and then the handles get painted brown. Still getting chalk on me, or graphite on me, so I'm obviously not done with that yet. I may hit the whole thing with a light layer of Aquanet, because that'll secure everything in without taking the shine away. That's a real problem with graphite powder. If you use a clear on top of it, it suddenly starts to look very plastic. And if we've gone to this length to not look plastic, the least we can do is, you know, do everything we can, right? So I'm just going to keep dry brushing, doing my thing. You do your thing. I'll see you in a minute. So, after the dry brushing, this is what we're left with. Look at that thing. It turned out absolutely perfect. I love how this looks. Oh my goodness. The handles, I just painted brown. That's it. I'm probably going to clear those. There's a little bit of gold and a little bit of gold. This isn't as secure as I want. I'm probably going to get a wider piece to put underneath. And that just covers the whole hole so it can pivot as needed. I didn't put a trigger on. That gets hot glued on, and I tend to do that. I tend to make like 3 or 4 of them and just throw them in a bin with this. That way it's, it's always there. But look at that. I am so happy with how this turned out. It's weathered way more than I was expecting. This is clearly a Advent Children Cerberus. It has been around a bit, but it's just stunning. So that's it. It was a fun build. Thanks for coming along with me. If this is your thing, and this is the kind of thing you're interested in, you know. So I'll see you next time.